It's one of the things I am looking forward to the most. The castle sieging and node sieging aspect of Ashes of Creation is one of the things that has me the most excited. Yes, castle sieging and node sieges are actually separate things, with node sieges being tied to the destruction and reset of its node. For the citizens of that node, it puts so much more on the line in terms of your success or failure. Now, castle sieging is definitely not a new idea. It's been around for a while, from Dark Age of Camelot, Lineage 2, Guild Wars 2, or Elder Scrolls Online, and even some games in development in Hell all boast of a castle siege system. I know there are more out there that I missed, but this video isn't about them. Now, I played the Elder Scrolls system myself extensively, so the examples that I use will mostly be that. If you have any stories of castle sieges from any other game yourself, please share them down below. I would love to hear them. But in ESO, I'd sometimes not leave the PvP zone for weeks on end. It was addictive and extremely enjoyable for me. I remember many nights after getting off work where I logged on and joined a party of like 20 people all laughing and joking as we rolled around Cyrodiil raiding and pillaging. It was inevitable to lose eventually as people began to log off for the night, but that was part of the fun. How long could your reign last? But the most fun came when things were tough but winnable, when you needed some big brain plays on the battlefield in addition to your skill, anticipating an enemy's advancement and where they will siege from, setting a trap and lying in wait, or perhaps we split our forces and sent a group to siege where they had come from, cutting off their ability for them to gain reinforcements. You see, once their base was flagged as under attack, they could no longer respawn. Now, I was no tactician, but I knew there was definitely a space for those more strategically minded in this game, and I appreciated that. I can see a similar path in a way for Ashes of Creation. Instead of going right to the metropolis, for instance, you may knock off some vassal nodes first, limiting supplies to the big city and making it more vulnerable. For ESO, every keep had 3 resources: a farm that affected NPC health, a quarry that affected wall health, and a lumber mill that affected door health. I see this as the equivalent of taking over vassal nodes in advance of a siege on a metropolis, likely much slower paced and spread over days instead of minutes, but the concept seems to be much the same. The issues with sieges that have plagued numerous titles in the past was it was simply a lot for the server to handle. Lag, frame rate drops, desync issues. For a developer, it would seem like a losing battle. Some games almost became a victim of their own progression, with flashy skills or gear that had X chance to do Y ability on hit, all of which relied on the server to calculate, add in a few hundred people to a small area, and you can see where issues might arise. But in a big surprise for the Alpha 1 testers, the siege that they took part in, any performance issues were largely non-existent. I remember multiple people saying something along the lines of, for an alpha to be this smooth in a massive PvP fight is unheard of. And I agree. I have beta tested quite a few games over the past 15 years or so, and they all had glaring issues, which 95% of the time would be resolved when the game launched. But for it to already be quite smooth is one of the most hopeful things in regards to Ashes of Creation, and that is so hard to get right. Alright, I've been babbling for quite a few minutes now. Let's talk about how sieges will actually work. Guilds will participate in castle sieges in an effort to capture and occupy one of the 5 guild castles in Ashes of Creation. I did see something where Steven said something about participants who were not in a guild that may want to take part for certain rewards that will be offered. If someone wants to verify that for me in the comments, I would appreciate it. I can't really find anything definitive on specifically castle sieges for non-guild members. Now, during the Alpha 1 sieges, the armies had 100 players each, but they plan to increase this over time. The short-term goal is to have 2 armies of 250 players each. They hope to eventually increase that number to 2 armies of 500 players each. So again, short-term goal, the goal is to have 500 players total and eventually work their way up to 1,000. Simple enough. Now, the sieges themselves are considered an objective-based PvP event, which means that they will take place within prime time for the server, and that is going to be somewhere between 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. While that might be frustrating for those on a swing shift, this at least does make sure that they will have the most participants at once, which early on in launch likely won't be any issue. I just hope there's a system in place to allow a fair chance for players to get a slot, if it is capped. Now, not necessarily every slot like being a lottery slot, but having like 20 or 25 or something along those lines might be pretty nice. That was one of the most frustrating aspects of New World to me. You basically needed like a contact within the company that was defending or attacking to see if you could politic your way into the war. I get why they do it, I just don't really like it. If your guild manages to take control of a castle, they will be provided benefits and trophies for their success. These benefits will increase the longer a guild holds the castle. The leader of the guild will then be king or queen of that location and levy taxes for the purposes of defense. These will be in addition to taxes imposed by the node's government. It is important to mention here that a king or queen of a guild castle does not mean that they are owners of the node. That will be the mayor, who is the leader of the node's government. But a king or queen can attempt to be elected mayor in addition to their status as king or queen.
That's a scary thought.
Now, each of the 5 guild castles in the world will have 3 castle nodes a part of each of them. These nodes actually exist outside of the normal node system and are independent of anything that's happening outside in the world in regards to certain nodes being shut down due to control changes and whatnot. These nodes are also excluded from the normal citizenship, zone of influence, freeholds, node governments, and any social organizational systems. These nodes will not be able to advance past stage 3, which is the village stage, and will always be military node types. Once a guild's ownership of a castle has begun, their surrounding castle nodes are barren and must be built up. The guild must develop these nodes to enhance the defenses of the castle, and to get all the surrounding nodes leveled up to the village stage will be quite the task for one guild, and likely require the assistance from the nearby community. Being a well-liked lord in this instance will go very, very far. Now, there is an interesting event that happens here on the weekends. At the end of each week, leading up to a castle siege, there is a period of time on the weekend where NPC-generated caravans start moving towards one of the castle nodes, carrying castle taxes from the nodes that fall under that castle's purview. At this time, it's on the guild, any allies or citizens of that node, to escort the caravan in order to ensure its arrival. Enemies of the guild have a very large incentive to make sure that this does not happen, and will try everything that they can to stop this transfer. By stopping any tax collection of that castle will reduce defensive capabilities, maybe upgrades won't happen as quickly, mercenaries might be unable to be hired, and ultimately a castle will be left more vulnerable. Defenses are going to be critical. It is the responsibility of castle owners and mayors to allocate funds to bolster siege defenses. A treasury's funds can be invested into improving a node's defensive structures like walls, gates, place down traps, and any other siege equipment. An item called a relic will offer a area of effect buffs to damage, attack range, or player health of the defenders. A node's defenders will have a considerable advantage. It seems like the attackers will need to have a very, very solid plan for a siege in order to be successful. Death penalties will not apply in objective-based events. Now, for node sieges, which may be confusing because it is separate from castle sieges, these can be declared by any player who completes the prerequisites for the siege initiation. Sieges are started via a siege scroll, which is acquired through a quest that scales in difficulty with respect to the level of the node. It is quite an investment to attain a siege scroll. These scrolls are specific to the node that is named on the scroll. Once a scroll has been named, it will then have a lifetime for when it will expire and no longer be usable. A scroll cannot be modified once after they are obtained. Once a scroll has been named, the mayor of that node will be notified that they are on a siege scroll, and you can imagine that things start to get kicked into high gear at this point. If a node loses its defense, it will be destroyed, along with any player housing. You can see the obvious incentive here to get a node ready for its defense and bolster your chances of success. Any node citizens that renounce citizenship during a declaration period may incur penalties. I actually find that pretty interesting and wonder if anyone has any examples to share or what they think should happen to people who abandon their node at such times. Getting ready to siege another node will take a similar amount of resources and time to what it took to develop that node being sieged. Many services shut down during a siege declaration period. Players won't be able to move goods out of depositories. New siege preparation quests and services start to pop up. Players actually do not need to be citizens of the node in order to register as defenders either, but they cannot be citizens of a node that is at war with the node they wish to defend. Additionally, any citizens of your allied nodes will not be able to register to attack you. Thank God for that. The systems in this game are quite complex, and I hope I covered it well enough for everyone. Feel free to share any questions or concerns down below. I very much encourage discussion on how the development of this game is going. I know the developers pay pretty close attention to the community, so any venue where they can hear opinions is going to be good, I think. Please leave a like if you haven't already, and subscribing, of course, goes a very long way in support of my dream of being a permanent basement dweller. Thank you for your time. Take care.